Morning, everybody. Welcome to Los Altos Community Coalition. Happy Halloween, trick or treat.
Sorry about that. You've all heard of werewolves. Well, I got pecked by a were-chicken when I was young, and I have these occasional episodes, but my medications have kicked in, so we're ready to go here. Again, welcome to Los Altos Community Coalition. I'm your host today, Kim Cranston. It's great to have you with us all today. I want to start by disclosing that Los Altos Community Coalition is a fiscally sponsored project of the Los Altos Mountain View Community Coalition Local Impact Collective. And now let me introduce our guest today. Crysta Krames is CEO of the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation. Crysta brings over 25 years of leadership in the nonprofit and behavioral health sectors to her role as CEO. She began her career as a case manager for foster youth in Chicago, the role that sparked her lifelong commitment to building social systems that create opportunities for people to thrive. Holding a Master of Public Administration, Crysta served on the foundation's board from 2012 to 2019, connection that inspired her to step into leadership and help guide the Community Foundation's next chapter. She is dedicated to strengthening the philanthropic fabric of Los Altos Hills, and Mountain View by building strong relationships with residents, mobilizing resources, and fostering effective public-private partnerships. An active civic leader, Crysta currently serves as president of Los Altos Rotary Club, is a past director of fine arts in the park and fine art in the park show, and has been recognized as a Paul Harris Fellow. Abby Karlin-Resnick is the Community Foundation's Community Initiatives Officer. Abby brings an extensive background in nonprofit management, having served in roles that touch every part of organizational operations, direct services, fundraising, financial management, communications, strategy development, and program evaluation. Over the last 25 years, she has worked in a variety of organizations in London, Boston, Chicago, and the Bay Area. Most recently, she served in various interim leadership roles and provides consulting on program evaluation, strategic planning, revenue generation, operational excellence, and organizational performance management with a specialty in supporting small social impact organizations. Abby grew up in Los Altos, attending Loyola Elementary, Block Junior High, and Mountain View High School. She holds a BA in psychology and a minor in education from UCLA, an MBA with a concentration in public and nonprofit management from Boston University, an MS in educational improvement and transformation from Drexel University, and a doctorate in educational leadership and management, also from Drexel University. Abby joined the Community Foundation team as the Community Initiatives Officer in March of 2025, overseeing the foundation's grant making and fiscal sponsorship portfolio. Crysta and Abby, thank you very much for joining us today. Please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, everybody. Happy to be here. I'm sure all of you were wondering how long I was going to get through Abby's educational portfolio on those introductions. Kim, good work on that, I have to say. Can everybody see my slides? I just want to get to make sure I'm there. Are we good on that, Kim?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you also for being here. This is a great crowd. I'm delighted to be able to talk about the Community Foundation. It is absolutely a love, as it is for many of the people on this call this morning, for me personally. So we're going to start and get right into it because we have a lot to cover because we are pretty amazing at your Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation. We have a solid team that I'll get into, but I want to start with really the spirit of which I was brought into the Community Foundation. You can see me here as a much younger version of myself with Roy back in the day. I was indeed a volunteer before I was a board member. And Roy Lay was a civic leader. He had a gift for connection and he inspired collaboration across civic and nonprofit partners. And that's really what pulled me in when I first moved to Los Altos in 2006, discovered he was a neighbor. He was the founding executive director. It was something that was built on structure and trust, collaboration. And I wholeheartedly credit that the 2 decades of his leadership, leading with heart and purpose, is what gave us the foundation. to scale into what we are now 35 years later. I believe his vision empowered the donors and kept focus locally. So here he is, and Penny's on the call. So shout out and love to that. They are both past mayors. And I do believe that his spirit endures all of the scholarships, initiatives, and partnerships that we continue to get out there and make sure that our communities are benefiting from. So quickly, I'll give you just the overview kind of by decades, if that's okay. We were indeed founded in 1991. The 90s had us incubating programs that you all know, like Bus Barn Theater, the History Museum, Los Altos Dispute Resolution Services, which is no longer in play, but was a solid, great mediation service for a long time. We launched annual gatherings, and those grew into lasting connections. Some of you will remember Summer Solstice, the Valentine's Day Gala that was a coveted event, our community brunches. So into 2000s, we began fiscally sponsoring, and that was the community catalyst aspect of the community foundation that went from disaster relief, such as the 9/11 community cares. We did that. Local philanthropy, major grant making. We had a big scholarship group, and we got the community house here. 2010s, we expanded block action teams, Inspire Mountain View. We got over 8 million in local grants. And in the 2020s, we responded to COVID, did some local relief efforts. We began to grow the Local Impact Collective to 19 projects, and we have surpassed 39 million in assets. We continue building community events like Oktoberfest and Spring Fling. There we go. So I want to give you, here's our team, some of whom are on the call, but this is our fun group. I believe we have the strongest, broadest team that we've probably ever been able to make happen here at the Community Foundation, just in terms of bandwidth and execution. Not everybody's here on the call, but a lot of these faces you'll recognize, and half of them probably are here. I want to give you just a quick overview on why community foundations versus like a private foundation, family foundations, corporate foundations. First and foremost, grants stay here. We're committed to helping neighbors, schools, local nonprofits. We are easy. We handle the management, reporting, and compliance. Many of you know Kathy Kameen. Shout out to her. She's been here almost 9 years. She is retiring at the end of the year. So you met Dan Nero on this call, who is our new director of finance, and a local guy. Wife was a longtime teacher at Covington. And we're super excited to have so many local committed staff members. Kathy Lara has been, for many of you, a long time board member on History Museum, at the Chamber, at the Town Crier. She was one of the owners. Like, people know her. So we're really happy that we have so many people that are integral to Mountain View, Los Altos, and Los Altos Hills communities. Better tax benefits. The donors can deduct significantly more of their contribution when giving through a community foundation. It's double what you can give as a family foundation, just to be clear, and private. And then other foundations fund from just a single source. And I think community foundations are special because we secure investment from a broad group of individuals. Your giving grows with the community needs. So let's get into kind of what that can look like for you guys. We host designated funds. We have many, I think we have 40 now designated funds. That is what shapes what's next for our community, gives you all a chance to honor a loved one with a memorial fund, or to sustain a single favorite organization, which we have a couple of donors that have recently opened to do, and to advance a shared cause through a field of interest, like mental health, cancer research, democracy, veteran support, that kind of thing. Those are designated funds, field of interest, or a specific designated cause. Donor advised funds, many of you are familiar with or have them. We would love for you to have them with us. But it offers everything you expect from national providers. You do get the full charitable deduction now, even if you spend it down over time. But it also does something that they can't, which is a donor advised fund with us provides a personal connection to the community where you raised your family and built your life. And I encourage you all to think about that, because lasting local impact is at right now what celebrates things like this. Community building fun. Here's our board treasurer, Curtis Cole. We've got a board member, Cindy Zen. We have just kind of a good crowd pick. The GM of the Los Altos Hills County Fire Department there with her husband. We had lots of fun. Here's our Los Altos Community Coalition, a couple of leads in the house. Marie, we didn't get you in this photo, but I think that was Beth. But we have a lot of fun, family fun. We had some, local square dancers that operate out of Springer Elementary. We really brought in, here's our board member, Laura Berman. Basically, we put everybody to work. All spouses, these are neighbors, everybody got into the action, and we had well over 500 people at this event. And I'd like to say, I feel like it's an opportunity right now in terms of just the antics in DC and how people are feeling overwhelmed, that this event really allowed for people to just lean in locally and unplug into something entirely unrelated. So it was nice. I'm going to go into our civic partnerships a bit, and I'm sure we'll get questions on this at the end, but I want to give you guys a chance to really absorb some of the cool stuff we've got going on. We are a fiscal sponsor for the Performing Arts Theater Catalyst project that's happening. That was a partnership with the city of Los Altos. They made a grant, and then we were part of the steering committee to help hire a capital campaign firm. We are fiscally sponsoring them because they become our employees, and this is how we can manage this. We have a great community cabinet being built out with community leaders. So that's a partnership to reimagine the downtown theater site. We gave a $1.4 million grant to the city of Los Altos. This was a partnership because it was a designated fund for a community pool that just wasn't happening. It had been for 22 years about, or close to that it had sat there growing, but not being able to be put into action for a community pool. So the advisor on that, who was the chief fundraiser, reached out to all of the former other donors on that list and got approval for a splash pad. So we've put no real restrictions to the city other than we'd like to create a joyful space for families as part of our mission with the Community Foundation. And they're going to do a splash pad at whatever downtown visioning park that they are able to come up with. We've got a local housing partnership fund with the city of Mountain View. That won't really officially launch until January, but we have got approval. And it is sitting in appropriations currently. So it's just a continuing collaboration that we're going to do with them as they've got 4 below market housing projects that they have going, and any shortfalls we want to be able to help them meet so that we can put that housing out into the community. And then recently we've just launched the Passport Equity Fund with Santa Clara County Supervisor Margaret Abacoga. This is a designated fund with us supporting passport acquisition for U.S. citizens and permanent residents that struggle with the cost or the application process. So those will be monthly workshops. We've had one, there'll be a monthly workshops going forward where we'll be granting to the nonprofits hosting these workshops. And Supervisor Abacoga is going to be championing fundraising for that designated fund. These are just some of our lead grantees that I want you guys to know about. There's our board chair, Eileen Ng, working in the garden at Hidden Villa with the team for Compassion Week. When I say lead grantee, these are all grantees that have that we granted at least $10,000 or more. Hidden Villa was $20,000. Our grants committee meets and does a lot of due diligence. So these are all $10,000 to $20,000 grantees that we've done in the last year. We've done a lot more grants than this, but I just want everybody to see that this was what we've done. We're also looking at sponsorship opportunities. So we did the Mountain View Buddhist Temple's Oban Festival. We did a new vista for seniors at the community center. And so we're really making sure that we are a partner that is elevating the nonprofit ecosystem, both through our local impact collective and fiscal sponsorship arm and our grant making arm. There's Aria and Abby and Dan trying to pull up sweet potatoes. And let me tell you, harder than you'd think. We've begun raising visibility. You guys hopefully have seen this in the last year. We reinvigorated our John Gardner Community Impact Recognition. This was something that Roy was very passionate about, and John Gardner was really fundamental to shaping how Roy wanted to see the Community Foundation engage with the community. And we had used to do events every year, John Gardner Awards, and it kind of became something that was difficult when you had the Joint Volunteer Awards also, and you had Rotary doing kind of an award. So what we've decided was to just make a point of recognizing amazing volunteers and celebrating that. So here's Laura Texler, who was a former board member. She'd been on the Environmental Commission. She'd been our board chair. She's currently the board chair of Actera. And she's just an all-around amazing advocate in community. She'd been on school board. So there's one. We have several. If you want to know more, those are on our website. We started doing ads. For the last 2 years, we've had a giant pumpkin that came to us from Los Altos Hills. Shout out to Vince, who brings them to us and grows these big heifers. And we do a guess the weight, just as a fun way of trying to engage the community. And the winner gets to do a $1,000 grant to the nonprofit of their choice. Last year, Taco was the benefactor. So that was fun. And this is Yanning Tan, who was volunteering with one of our fiscally sponsored projects, Soil and Water Garden. You'll hear a lot more about this from Abby. I just kind of want to give you guys an overview. We believe so strongly in the Local Impact Collective because it powers this community collaboration that community foundations really represent. This is a little community house photo because at the Roy Lave Community House, we want all of our projects to feel like this is their house too. So they can come, they use our conference room often after hours or on the weekends. They can come in and use a copier on occasion, although not to make 9,000, just so you guys know, Kim and Joe. But however they need to use the space, we invite that. Here's Gary Hedden of Greentown, Los Altos. This is Startup Squad, Brian Weisfeld. And here's shout out to Los Altos for Representation and Equity, Christine and Tony, who are on that steering committee with Janine. This was just a fun one. If you guys remember our Spring Fling for Good Things, this has kind of replaced the summer solstice. We had it at Leslie Bahar's home this last May. We have another one coming up this May. We had our Elvis impersonator, but here's a gaggle of beauties from Los Altos Hills. A board member, Elisa Agagoba, here with her husband and my husband, Mayor Pete Daly, and just a lot of crew that we hope you guys recognize through this. But Spring Fling for Good Things is our effort we do sell tickets for that. And it's our effort to support and subsidize as we keep fees really low for our Local Impact Collective. And many of them don't have any money to really, it's a $500 or 5% fiscal sponsorship that Abby will get into, but it's obviously not enough to sustain the number of employees that support that between our finance director, our community initiatives officer, and our community engagement person that's supporting and elevating that. So we keep it to 20 because of the bandwidth, but we definitely want to support that and continue to look for opportunities to strengthen that and celebrate that. We have a partnership that Abby will tell you about with the city too for a summit for them. Oh, so with that, I think I'd like to turn it over to Abby to get into a little bit more fiscal sponsorship so that it allows everyone time for questions and for more engagement.
Yeah, thanks, Krista. So we'll sort of take a deep dive, or maybe a shallow dive, but a dive nonetheless into an incredibly important and yet also sort of esoteric little corner of the nonprofit sector. But fiscal sponsorship is not something that many people understand or know about. And I really credit the Community Foundation for being incredibly visionary in establishing fiscal sponsorship as a critical aspect of how the organization can really impact local change. So really grateful to our legacy leaders. Go back one, Krista. Sorry. Not quite there yet. To our legacy leaders who are on this call, and to our local impact collective leaders who are here as well. Of course, that's when my notices decided to come through. Sorry. So fiscal sponsorship is when an umbrella organization, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, like the Community Foundation, provides legal, financial, and administrative infrastructure to community-led, typically, projects, but they can be projects of any kind, social impact projects. We'll talk a little bit about a whole variety of the types of fiscal sponsors there are out there, but basically providing that back-end support to these projects so that they can get started and keep going. It really allows these types of efforts to maintain their mission and identity, but also benefit from effective, strong nonprofit governance and management. Okay, next slide. So why fiscal sponsorship? It can seem sort of like a convoluted approach to social impact work, projects under another organization, but it really is a place for community-led ideas to take seed and grow. It's an opportunity to prototype new ideas and give them a chance to, yes, perhaps grow or stay with a fiscal sponsor, or ultimately decide, no, this is, we've done our work and it's time to sunset. So it really gives space for some of that risk taking that could not take place otherwise without the ability to have a fiscal sponsorship. It's also a way to really strengthen the broader nonprofit ecosystem. We'll talk a little bit about the challenges of administrative support for nonprofit organizations. But this is a mechanism to really not only enable that prototyping, but also enable good governance long term for organizations, rather than having every good idea have to be turned into a nonprofit organization that then has to figure out all of the governance practices and policies, good financial management, good organizational management, right? There's a lot that goes into that. And so fiscal sponsorship can really facilitate that without having each individual project or idea to have to build that themselves. And then lastly, it's really a way to cultivate collaboration. So as Crysta mentioned, we have a maximum of 20 projects that we fiscally sponsor at any given time. That is really a cohort of community leaders who can come together, trade ideas, share thoughts, and collaborate across projects. So we talk about our projects, Resilient Los Altos and Greentown, for example. These are both projects that do work on landscaping. For Greentown, they're looking at sustainable landscaping, drought tolerant landscaping. Well, it turns out that that's also great for fire resilience. But we can create those kinds of connections at a hyper local level. So this is really an essential part of a healthy nonprofit ecosystem in any community, but especially in this community. Okay, next slide. Talking about different communities where fiscal sponsorship exists, it's a growing aspect of the nonprofit ecosystem, but really still, as I said, sort of an esoteric little corner of the nonprofit ecosystem. There are a couple of large fiscal sponsors, primarily up in San Francisco and in Oakland, and that is often the case for fiscal sponsorship in different regions, as they live in the large cities. Not so much in the suburbs and particularly in rural communities. But in our case, there's several large ones up in San Francisco and Oakland. Not so much around elsewhere. There are a couple of smaller ones, Actera and Local Color San Jose. But we're kind of only the only game in town in the Mid Peninsula, and we have this sort of magical scale where we're able to keep things personal and connected, but also being able to serve several community-led projects at one time. So we're really filling an important gap here in the Bay Area and particularly on the peninsula. Next slide. I mentioned, and Crysta has also mentioned about management cost sharing and the challenges as standalone nonprofits to do all of the things that need to be done to manage a nonprofit organization. There was a study by Social Impact Commons looking at the cost to run a standalone nonprofit. And they generally run 17 to 27% of revenue is spent on administration and compliance. That was a national sample. I suspect that percentage is probably higher in the Bay Area given the cost of living. And it's not to say that administration and compliance are a bad thing by any means. It's essential that supporters invest in those aspects of nonprofit management. The programs don't happen without that. But we don't need every single idea to become a standalone nonprofit and then spend, upwards of a quarter of their revenue on administration and compliance. And that's really, from a financial perspective, where fiscal sponsorship comes in. Most fiscal sponsors will charge 10 to 15% in management cost sharing, which is what the administrative fees are often called. So 10 to 15% of revenue is typically what fiscal sponsors charge for the back office support and coaching and consulting that they provide to their fiscally sponsored projects. At the Community Foundation, though, we have really put a stake in the ground and said this is an essential part of a healthy social impact ecosystem in Los Altos Hills, and Mountain View. And so we have chosen to charge just 5% in management cost sharing. And we, as Crysta said, underwrite the difference there because it costs us more than that, about 3 times more than what we bring in revenue, in fact. But we've chosen to underwrite that with support from the community because we feel it is really essential to be able to provide this service to the community and to invest in these community-led ideas. Next slide. And so here's who our projects are. So we call our fiscally sponsored projects our local impact collective. Several of them are on here on this call as we speak. So we have Cafes, Center for Age-Friendly Excellence here, Greentown. We have Los Altos for Representation and Equity folks here, Los Altos Forward, of course. Who else do we have that I've seen come on? Resilient Los Altos. I think that's all. If I missed anyone, I apologize. But we've got projects from really all different types of sectors. Many of them are civic engagement, and that is projects like this. Opportunities to engage residents in the issues, the current issues at hand. But we've got environmental projects, we've got arts projects, an area that is becoming critically underinvested right now. And so we've really put a premium on that. Projects, of course, supporting seniors. Movement building. So this is really around policy work and supporting folks of different identities to do power shifting, education, of course, and then again, policy work, as I mentioned. All right. I think one more. Yes. And Krista mentioned this. We are really excited this year to be providing our first ever Changemaker Summit. Save the date for Saturday, January 31st. In the morning, we'll be at the Garden House. And this is an opportunity for us to bring together all of our local impact collective project leaders, as well as nonprofit leaders in our three communities, to come together and do some collaboration and networking, yes, but also learn from the experts and get inspired. So we're really, really excited about this. This will be a largely free endeavor, except for really free for all of the social impact leaders living in our three communities. So we're really excited. Registration will be available in the next couple weeks. And we'll be posting that on our website. It will be limited, so get in early. I'll leave it there.
All right. Yay.
Great. Crysta, Abby, thank you so much for the very informative presentation. Having been involved with fiscally sponsored projects with the Community Foundation for over a decade and having experience with other fiscal sponsors, I really appreciate all the work you do. I have a few questions before we open it up for questions from today's attendees. Crysta, what do you think is the Community Foundation's biggest achievement to date?
We have so many amazing things that I feel like this community foundation's done. I mean, we were integral in the Day Worker Center. One of our DAF holders secured the land, and Roy had a whole big group that pulled that together. That was amazing and powerful. The History Museum. I mean, kind of the joke was that people started on our board, and then we moved these people onto these other boards and lost them as community foundation board members because we were so committed to being that catalyst to these amazing groups. Stage Company would be one of those as well. So I'd probably just say for my year, in the last year, that the $1.4 million grant, making that happen, that was a lot of work, tracing down all of those people who had given to that and having Cameron Desmond Knight, who was the advisor on the fund, reach out to people. Probably took her 2 months to really sit and find those people. Like I said, it was a great concept, but there was enough not in my backyard people for that the community pool just wasn't ever happening. And we want to put that money back in the community. So being able to award that as a grant to the city for their downtown visioning and make it so that it's still a splash pad, which the original architect design of the community pool had, but really without other restrictions. I tell people it may be 3 shooting water spigots out of the ground, or it may be a whole area. It just depends on how that all plays out in the next 2 years. But I think that was a big one. It creates an intergenerational gathering space to invest in everyday moments, and that's the kind of thing the Community Foundation wants to encourage and support in building community. So that'd be the one probably for this year.
Great. Thank you. And what do you think is the biggest challenge facing the community that the Community Foundation can help to address, and how can it do that?
For me, our team has really spent a lot of time leaning in and talking about this with our board. I think the biggest challenge our community faces is living where you work. It is the growing distance between people who make this place work and the place itself. So, teachers, first responders, healthcare workers, city staff, all of those people who support our community together, they really can't afford to live here any longer. So, when people who shape the city are no longer also part of its daily rhythm, it stops humanizing all of us, and we don't see each other as neighbors. We're seeing each other as those roles: a teacher, a firefighter, a nurse. But as we talk about this, we believe in the Community Foundation, and our board believes really strongly that proximity builds empathy, trust, and accountability. So if your kid's teacher is driving an hour to get to school, or the firefighter on duty can't afford a home in the city that they're asked to protect, we lose more than convenience. And I want to underscore that we're losing connection. The rhythm of a community is built on these chance encounters, that those shared routines of running into people at the grocery store, seeing your kids coach at the hardware store, or your Foothill Community College professor at the movies with their spouses. I'm friends with Christina Whalen, who's the president of Foothill College. She told me 11% of their entire payroll system lives in the district, right? That's a huge red flag. Those small, ordinary moments are what builds quiet respect and a shared sense of belonging. And that's the kind of community we want to preserve. So we're in January, we are going to launch a Live Where You Work challenge. We're hoping to bring attention to this growing divide and spark local solutions. We've decided we're going to award a $25,000 grant and a fiscal sponsorship, if it's not already a standalone nonprofit, to the best potential solution to begin to address that. And it may not mean we've solved the affordable housing crisis. What we're trying to do is bring people into the fray and own the conversation of the loss of community that happens when you cannot live where you work.
Great, thank you. For either of you, how do you measure the impact of the foundation's initiatives?
Do you want this, Abby, or do you want me to? I can roll it out.
Why don't you start and I'll add?
Okay. So we look at how well we're attracting and retaining donors. I'm happy to say that has been on an upward trajectory. We track the creation of new designated funds as a sign of the giving culture that we as a community foundation are trying to build. I'm also happy to report in the last year we've added 5 of those. Our ability to make meaningful size grants across our community. That's been a shift. Our grant making team, when I came on board, we all met, and Abby has been amazing at co-leading that with Clara Roa, who's on our board, and saying we need to do this at a $10,000 level. So we're giving fewer grants, but we're trying to be significant in our impact. And so we've started doing that pretty well. We value the feedback from our local impact collective partners. Abby is doing monthly communications at a minimum with all of those groups. We seek strong attendance at our events, and certainly that has happened in the last year as well. Part of it is also just having events. We kind of went as a community foundation in COVID and focused a lot on the resilience and support that we could do through COVID, which mattered. But then coming out of that, we weren't really having events. And some of that was some bandwidth conversations. Some of that was just leadership style. So I'm happy that this team we have now is very supportive of events. We're all pulling in our neighbors and our friends and people that can help us knock those out of the park. And then we try to consider how effectively we amplify community voices. Obviously, Los Altos Forward and this coalition is super helpful and additive in that, but we want to invest in the areas that create shared benefits to make those dollars go further. What did I forget, Abby? Anything?
Well, I would just add, there's ways to measure in terms of numbers, right? We can count up the number of people that our grantees impact in our communities. We can count up the number of people that our local impact collective projects impact, right? We can count all sorts of things. But I think often one of the things that's lost in conversations about measuring impact is the stories behind that, what is actually enabled. I think our local impact collective projects in particular individually have incredibly important stories about how do you create a community where everybody feels welcome and is able to access all of the services in that community? How do you engage with a broad swath of community members about making the community safer in an emergency? How can you talk about the importance of just having conversations with, community leaders and our elected representatives? Those are really important stories, and I think we're starting to think about how we can most effectively communicate all of those different stories in addition to all of the numbers that we can share about success.
Yeah.
Great. And finally, since it's Halloween, I have one last question I have to ask you. What is the Community Foundation doing to prepare the community for the zombie apocalypse?
I mean, that is a fair question, Kim. I think that we've enlisted a couple of local impact collective partners that are critical in the zombie apocalypse. Resilient Los Altos, obviously, they're going to make sure we're prepared for any kind of emergency, undead or otherwise. So shout outs to them. And then Lair, a Los Altos representation and equity, they're going to make sure that those of us left with brains still get represented, and that's not going to be easy. So I would say I'd lean towards those two and in our preparation for the zombie apocalypse at this point.
Okay, great. Crysta, Abby, any closing thoughts or remarks before I open it up for questions from attendees?
I mean, I just personally want to thank everyone for being part of this. I definitely have felt encouraged by city council members, by local impact collective members, and by friends and neighbors, by our legacy circle group. They have really all come out and been encouraging as I took this on. Some of you may also know that I'm the president of Los Altos Rotary this year, and so there was a high level of anxiety in my ability to manage things. And I feel like we have all built this back together in a way that we can feel really proud of. And I have, like I said, just a great team that's doing the work here, and we're open for business. So anybody can drop in at any day of the week and talk through good community building ideas for Mountain View, Los Altos, and Los Altos Hills for sure.
Great. Well, Crysta, Abby, thank you so much for the great conversation. I'd like to now open it up to attendees for questions. Please raise your virtual hand and I'll call on you. And remember, one question per person and no speeches, please. Larry Lang, I see your hands up.
Yes, it is. Crysta, Abby, thank you for the good presentation. And thanks also to everybody on the call who has been part of the foundation, past or present. It's a great community asset. The question, it was a short speech, I guess. The question is, you mentioned the limit of 20 projects. To me, that sort of suggests a bit of a timer. I presume some graduate and become bigger things. Some just don't work out for whatever reason. But presumably some of the birds need to be told it's time to leave the nest. How do you think about that?
Thank you for that question, actually, Larry. That is a good one. So Living Classroom, Mentor Tutor Connection, those were with us for 4 years and 8 years, I think, respectively. So those were launched. Fondo for Solidarity is now in the Mountain View Community Land Trust. That's launched. So we can point to some that were obviously with us and launched, but part of it is really bandwidth. I would love to say we could scale and go, to 40. Abby and Aria are both part-time employees. We only have them 20 hours a week. So some of this is really a matter of what we feel like we can just do. And then some of it, as Abby mentioned, is our own ability to support. We roughly spend 280,000 on sponsorship, on doing this. And that's in addition to then also needing our operational budget line item. So it's tricky. So yes, we do mandate a charitable benefit, and those that are not showing that to us on a quarterly basis at a minimum will have to sit down and be asked to go. But I think Abby has done an amazing job, really, of meeting with all of them and making sure that they all feel that they are not just supported, but they have a duty to keep that charitable benefit up front and foremost in people's view, and we're doing that. So we've got great partnerships. The city gave us a small grant, but we're a $5,000 grant for the summit And we are spending money to really bring that into our 3 communities and host that opportunity, both with our summit, both with our collective, local impact collective people, but also with community members who are interested in learning more about that. So that's a big one. The fiscal sponsorship project we decided to take on was a city grant for the theater. That one has been a lot of work to launch, but we've got it going. So, you're right, Larry. They should be timed to an extent, but you don't really know how long some of these things will take. So we don't really try to put that pressure in it. MVLA Scholars and Greentown Los Altos are both amazing projects. And MVLA Scholars gives over $600,000 in scholarships every year, and they're entirely volunteer, both of those organizations. They could not do what they're doing if they also had to have an accountant, three paid employees, an audit, paying into being a nonprofit themselves and launching. But certainly, if they want to do that, we're supportive because it opens up another slot for somebody else. So we encourage that, but we decide that based on the charitable benefit that our communities are receiving from those groups. Abby, anything else?
Yeah, I'll just add, part of it is as projects come to us, understanding what their long-term goals are. Is this a pilot project? Is this a startup to be incubated into a nonprofit? Is this a project that just really is best for fiscal sponsorship long-term? And then we figure out, do we have the capacity to support that goal? And what do we need to do to support that goal? So we're really looking at each individual project and their goals, and then figuring out how we can best support them to achieve those goals. And sometimes that's going to mean we are full up with 20 projects for a year, and other times we have 3 or 4 slots available based on just the life cycle of any given project. So we're really, and I think fiscal sponsorship has to be open to those different trajectories for projects.
Great, thank you. We have a hard stop at 9:30, so time for one last question. Janine, you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you. Hi, Crysta and Abby. My question has to do with how, you're serving 3 communities and the needs across those communities are vastly different. How do you balance both the impact collective, your grants, your staffing? How do you make the balance? Because obviously need is great everywhere, but perhaps greater in certain areas than others. Thank you.
Sure. I don't believe that we don't seek to have a requirement of balance. We're really needs based. And I think what we're committed to is to being the philanthropic hub for generosity. So our grants committee is made up of community members, and they're deciding where to make those grants and how to support those different needs. But we're hyper local. So for us, it matters that those 3 communities are engaged and that they're getting benefit as a result of their support of the Community Foundation as well. So I will say that the local impact collective, we do try to kind of make sure that we have folks from all 3 communities as part of those things, and we encourage that within with those leaders. And then the Live Where You Work challenge is obviously something that impacts all 3 of our communities. So that housing is something that we're leaning into really strongly in 2026, both with the city of Mountain View and their investment into the fund, and then with our contest that we're doing, the challenge. And we're going to try to promote all of the different people's ideas in the papers and get really people excited about how we can make sure that we continue to preserve and rebuild the kind of community that we each grew up in, that we knew how that looked with service providers and its neighbors. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. I know some of you need to leave, and in fact, we have a hard stop today at 9:30. But before you go, a few announcements. Our next meeting will be on Friday, November 14 from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. Please join us for a conversation with Congressman Sam Liccardo. Please support Los Altos Community Coalition by going to our YouTube channel and clicking on the subscribe button to subscribe to our channel. A link to our YouTube channel is posted in chat for your convenience. If you would like to be added to the Community Coalition mailing list, please send an email to info@losaltoscommunitycoalition.org. This email is posted in chat for your convenience as well. And finally, last but not least, Los Altos Community Coalition is a fiscally sponsored project of the Los Altos Mountain View Community Coalition, Community Foundation's Local Impact Collective. Thank you to the Community Foundation for your ongoing support. Thank you once again, Crysta and Abby, for a great presentation today and conversation. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Happy Halloween to all of you. Happy trick-or-treating. Uh-oh, I feel another episode coming on. Trick-or-treat. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, everybody. Thanks for
two
being
weeks.
here today. We appreciate you.